The UK's eventual withdrawal from the EU, if that happens, will weaken the consensus on sanctions against Russia. How concerned are you about that? And overall, do you think the Brexit vote was a victory for Vladimir Putin?
I understand there's been some public speculation on this, but our view is we don't expect the UK's referendum to have any impact on the rollover of sanctions against Russia. As you know, this was talked about recently at the G7 in Japan, where some of you accompanied the president to. Since the start of the crisis in Ukraine, the United States, the EU, and the G7 have worked in close cooperation to develop a set of sanctions that have had a deep impact on the Russian economy. So our understanding is those will roll over, but obviously the U.S. officials will be working on that in the coming weeks and months. But again, all of the G7 partners in Japan issued a commitment that the sanctions will stay in place unless Russia decides to start to abide by the Minsk agreements. If they start to abide by those agreements, those sanctions can start to be rolled back. So President Putin has a choice to make. He can either continue down this path, which has been harmful for the Russian economy. As I mentioned, the Russian economy has contracted about 1/6. It's smaller than the Spanish economy right now. That's a direct result of a number of factors, but it's hard to ignore the impact of these sanctions. Again, these weren't just bilateral sanctions put in place with the United States. They were sanctions that, thanks to the American leadership around the world, we had a whole host of international partners do so as well. That's why the sanctions have had such impact. Great.